All right, hello ATM. This is going to be a video lesson on 3-3, the group portion. So we're going to be going back to that snow cone business problem that we were dealing with back in 3-2. So it says, we use this graph below to estimate the net profit if 150 snow cones were sold, and also to estimate the number that we'd need to sell to make a profit of 50. So you might remember back in 3-2, we were looking to see if 150 snow cones were sold, which was right about there. We followed it down and we estimated that it was about negative 150. You might remember we said if 150 snow cones were sold, it's a profit of negative 150. And then we did the same thing for 50. We followed it over. And you might remember that we estimated about 475 snow cones, because if you follow it down, we're a little bit more than the halfway point, and that's a profit of 50. But of course that was an estimation. So it says using the graph was fine, except that it's just an estimation. What if we want exact answers instead? Well, we did find an equation in 3-2 for the profit. So for the rest of this lesson, or for a good portion of it, we're going to be using this equation to get exact values, okay? So let's look at number 1. It says, given the fact that X represents the number of snow cones sold, what should we do to find the profit made from selling 150 snow cones? Well, if X is the number of snow cones, I'm going to abbreviate, number of snow cones, then this here tells me that X equals 150, right? So we are going to replace the X with 150 in the equation that's given to us at the beginning of the lesson. So the equation that's given to us is P equals negative 245 plus 0.63X. So I would then just replace that X with 150. And if you type that into your calculator, we get, sorry, let me put my negative before the dollar sign, we get negative $150.50. So number 2, how does this compare to the estimate you found in the previous lesson? I'm just going to say very close, because we estimated negative $150 and we were only 50 cents off. Now we're going to do something similar in number 3. It says, given that P represents the profit, what should we do to find the number of snow cones needed to make a profit of $50? So here they're saying P represents profit. So then they're telling us, well, what if the profit is $50? Okay, so now we can take the equation that they gave us in the beginning of the lesson, and instead of putting a number in for X, we're going to put this number in for P. So it's going to be 50 equals negative 245 plus 63 cents times X. Okay. All right, I'm going to ignore the next couple of questions that says what happens when you do this, why is this question in this lesson. We'll get to those answers as we go through the lesson. All right, so now number 4 says now you should be able to solve an equation to find the number of snow cones needed to make a profit of $50. So now they're basically saying take the equation from number 3 and actually solve it. So rather than rewrite it, I'm just going to go ahead and start solving it up here. I'm going to add 245 to both sides, and that gets me 295 equals 63 cents X. Now I can divide by 0.63, and I have to round here, so be careful. When you divide 295 by 0.63, we can maybe round to the nearest tenth, 468.3, okay? So that means we must sell 469 snow cones. I rounded up because if we round down, we won't get the actual profit we're looking for, to exceed a $50 profit. Okay. Now number 5 says check your answer by plugging it back into the equation you wrote. So I'm going to take the 469 and substitute it back into the original equation, just to see what we get for the profit. So negative 245 plus 63 cents per snow cone, so times 469. So if we type this part into the calculator, we end up getting, we want the profit of 50, and we end up getting 50.47. Now, why is it not exactly true? Doesn't make the equation exactly true. It's because we rounded. I'm going to say no, because we rounded. But we rounded up for a reason, because if we rounded down, we wouldn't have reached the $50 profit, and we wanted to get at least $50. Okay. Moving on to number 6. Number 6 says use the equation to find the profit if 700 snow cones are sold. I'd like you to pause the video to see if you can try this one without me. In order to figure out the profit if 700 snow cones are sold, this time we're going to put 700 in for X because they're telling us how many snow cones. In other words, they're telling us the X value. So if I substitute that in, our profit is $196. Now it says use the equation to find the number of snow cones if they have a profit of $400. So now they're flipping it again and they're saying take P as 400 and solve for X to find out how many snow cones we need to sell. So again, I'm going to add 245. I get 645 equals 63X. Now I can divide by 63 cents. And be very careful again. We want to round. We get 1023.8. So we must sell, we have to round up again, 1024 snow cones to make at least $400. All right, so hopefully you feel good about those, being able to substitute numbers in for the X, but then also substituting numbers in for P and being able to solve. So let's see, number 8 here. We're going to look back and analyze our work a little bit. It says look very carefully at the steps you did to solve the equations in 4 and 7. So if I put that under my camera again, in number 4, we started by adding 245 and then we divided 0.63. We followed those same steps in number 7. We added 245 and then we divided by 0.63. I'm going to save some time and not actually write down what I just said, but just know that we've briefly talked about it. So number 9 says take that equation and go ahead and do those steps, but leave P as P and leave X as X. So we're going to start by adding 245, and here's where it gets a little uncomfortable. You started doing this in Algebra 1. We can't add the P and the 245 together, so we just leave it as P plus 245 equals the 0.63x. Now let's divide. And that means X equals whatever the profit is plus 245 divided by 63 cents. Okay? Be prepared for the fact that you won't get a number this time for your solution. You'll get an expression involving P. So the number of snow cones can be found by taking the profit, adding 245, and dividing by 0.63. Okay, let's move on. Number 10, or just before number 10, it says what you just did is solve a literal equation. This is an equation with more than one variable, so that when you solve for one of the variables, the result is an expression rather than a number. In this case, we were given an equation that told us P for a given value of X. We turned it into an equation that tells us X for a given value of P. Why would we want to do that? In other words, what was the point of doing this? Okay. So let's read number 10. Suppose we were interested in using this spreadsheet to calculate the number of snow cone sales that would be necessary to make certain levels of profit. Like, let's say I want to make at least $500. How many snow cones do I have to sell? No, now I want to make at least $1,000. How many snow cones do I have to sell? Rather than recalculating it over and over again, we can use the formula we found in number 9, and we can set it up in a spreadsheet to be able to very easily have all the answers that we want. Now it says that you can use a formula in an Excel spreadsheet or a Google spreadsheet, but that's not really necessary. We can just make our own table, and what we can do is type it into our calculator. So we are going to treat, I know it's kind of going opposite, but we're going to treat this like the y and the p like the x. So it's y equals, and then all of this is going to go in our equation. So go to your y equals, clear out anything that's in there. Our numerator has to be in parentheses, so we're going to type x plus 245 in parentheses, and then divided by 0.63. Okay, go ahead and press enter. Now, in order to fill in our table, we can go to the table in our calculator, but notice our table's going by ones, okay? We want to go by, gosh, we need higher numbers. So instead of going to the tables, there's actually a really quick way of getting what we need. We can go to second trace, and it's the very first option. It'll calculate any value for you. So go ahead and press enter. It'll graph it first, which we don't really care about the graph, but this won't do it unless you graph it. Go ahead and press 0 in for the profit. That means that we need to sell 389 snow cones. I rounded up, notice that. Do it again, second trace, go to value, type in 250. Oh, I have to extend my graph. Okay, let's do this instead. Let's go to the table set. So above the window, do second window. And let's have it go by 250. So instead of going by ones, let's have it go by 250s. That way we don't have to make our graph bigger. So 0, 389, and then 250 would be 786, and then 500 would be 1,183, and then 1,000 would be 1,977. So notice I rounded up for all of them, okay? And keep in mind that P was the profit, X is the number of snow cones, okay? So use a calculator or spreadsheet to complete the table and then describe why solving the equation for X was helpful. I'm just going to verbally answer number 11. Rather than doing what we did in number 7, rather than doing this equation work for every single row, it was faster if we just did the equation work in general and then typed it in the calculator and be able to put it into, get it from our table. So that's a lot faster than having to solve this equation every single time you have to fill in a row. So it's a little bit faster. All right, what we're gonna do now, let me flip this over. Before we move on to number 12, I want you guys to set your table back to the normal setting. So go back to table set by doing second window and then change the 250 to a 1 again. That way when you go back to your tables, it's going by ones again. Okay, so for number 12, it gives us the temperature formula. Earlier in the course, we worked with 2 equations for converting temperatures between Fahrenheit and Celsius. We've got Fahrenheit and Celsius, Celsius and Fahrenheit. Let's start with the formula that calculates F in terms of C and see if we can solve for C. Okay, so we're going to start with this equation. And we've got 9/5 C plus 32. It says first subtract blank from both sides. If we want to take this equation and solve for C, we have to first subtract 32 from both sides. Okay, fill in the blank, then perform that step on the equation. So now we have F minus 32 equals 9/5 C. Okay, Now multiply both sides by, our goal now is to get rid of this fraction. You might remember in Algebra 1, it's easiest if you multiply by the reciprocal. Now I have to put parentheses on the left-hand side because I want to multiply everything by 5/9. So let's put 5/9 there. So I distribute, or actually let's leave it undistributed. So we've got 5/9 times f minus 32 equals, and the reason we did the reciprocal over here is because the diagonals are going to cancel. The 5's go away and the 9's go away. And what do you notice? We just found the second equation. So you can take the first equation, solve for c, and that will give you the second equation, or you can take the second equation, solve for f, and that will give you the first equation. So I'm just verbally answering number 4 there. All right, what I'd like you guys to do is to now try the Did You Get It, which can be found on page 319. And pause the video, give it a try, and then unpause the video and see how you did. So the Did You Get It, they give us the simple interest formula. This is hopefully familiar. And it says to solve the equation for t. So I like to put a box around the variable that I'm solving for, and it might be helpful to draw the line down the middle where the equal sign is. To get t by itself, I always have to start by adding or subtracting. So I subtract this p over first. I now have a minus p on the left and p times rt on the right. Now all three of these pieces on the right are being multiplied together. So I have to do the opposite of multiplication, and I have to divide by anything that I'm trying to get rid of. So p divided by p goes away, r divided by r goes away. And now I'm left with t on the right-hand side, which was the goal. I wanted t to be by itself. It looks super messy on the left-hand side, but that's it. That's what it looks like when you're solving a literal equation. This was pretty big in Algebra 1, and then it was also touched on again in Algebra 2. So do the best that you can with the homework. Hopefully we don't have too many issues. Reach out to me through email or Google Classroom if you have any questions. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Bye.